Sit up. Sit up and beg.
How can we tell whether something is alive? I don't mean whether it is still alive or not alive anymore. How do we know what counts as life, and tell that apart from things that were never living? What is the definition of life? And where do we draw the line between what might only seem to be alive and what really is alive? Think about that. Everything you can see, smell, or touch is made of or by chemicals. A fundamental aspect of chemistry is that chemicals do stuff. There are natural forces within and acting upon the most basic parts of every element of any chemical, such that when different chemicals are combined, there is potential to react. Depending on their structure, they may bond into compounds with new properties. For example, at room temperature, hydrogen and oxygen are both flammable gases, but together they make liquid water, which will put out a fire. Likewise, sodium is a metal and chlorine is a poison, but these combine to make salt, which can preserve and flavor food. There are several types of chemical reactions. Sometimes they generate energy, like heat or light. They can dissolve, corrode, or destroy. But they can also build up new elaborate structures. In more complex chemical environments, these reactions can be repetitive, even constant, and may drive the process of building increasingly complicated macromolecules. At its most basic, life is simply chemistry, but it is not simple chemistry. The chemistry of living things is extremely complex, but it is still chemistry that determines whether something is alive. What is the meaning of the word life? That's not such a simple question. Depending on exactly what you mean, it might be fair to say that a planet could be alive. Some planets are dynamic, energetic, and you could compare that to a dead world that isn't active anymore. A computer program might be alive in some sense too, if it can learn, grow, reproduce, and adapt as it needs to. You might think it's alive if it grows, breathes, and eats. But what about fire? Fire moves, it grows, it needs oxygen to sustain itself, and it feeds by metabolizing food or fuel for energy. It is even possible for a fire to die. So is fire alive? Well, you can say a car died too, but that doesn't mean the car was ever alive. The study of living things is called biology, and scientists have determined 7 criteria or characteristics that all living things on Earth fit into. Anything that is considered alive will have all 7 things in common. The first criteria of life is metabolism. Being metabolic essentially means burning or converting food or fuel to generate energy. But that one criteria alone is not enough to qualify as living. Lots of chemicals are metabolic, so we need to be more specific. Biologists examine organisms, things that are made of living cells. Most scientists think cells must be a fundamental component of any organism. Most organisms are no more than just one single microscopic cell, but many other organisms are made of millions of interactive cells. They are the building blocks of multicellular organisms. Crystals are another example of something that grows, and some crystals form inside a geode, which is an enclosed structure like a cell. Scientists have even created microscopic crystals which can be stimulated by light to move and metabolize and act like they're alive. Response to stimuli is one of the criteria of biology, and some people really believe that crystals should be considered a form of life. What do you think? People sometimes underestimate how responsive plants are to outside forces or stimuli. However, plants often respond dramatically to environmental stimuli. Look at the way flowers face the sun in order to get the energy they need to make food during photosynthesis. So, are plants alive? Reproduction is fundamental to biology, but this can be a confusing criteria because there are simple proteins that can reproduce without any genetics by converting existing proteins to their same type. There are also much more complex genetic cells that can't reproduce on their own but are determined to do it anyway. Take this monstrosity, for example. It looks like an alien space probe, but it's actually a virus. Once its legs touch the active sites on a bacterial cell, it responds by injecting its own genes into it, so that the bacteria is reprogrammed to produce new copies of the virus. Because viruses have to hijack the machinery of living cells in order to multiply. Organisms also change and adapt to factors that are biotic, meaning living, and abiotic or non-living factors in their environment. Some abiotic factors in an environment are sunlight, air, soil, and water. Viruses often only infect specific living hosts and adapt to hosts that will help them reproduce. This means that viruses can evolve, and that too is one of the criteria for life. So are viruses alive? Thus far, we have shown a half-dozen criteria for life, and we've shown how a few things meet some of these requirements, but not all of them. There's one more. Organisms, things that are definitely alive, must have metabolic cells. They must grow and develop, respond, reproduce, and evolve. But they must also be able to repair themselves and maintain a healthy internal chemical balance. This regulation of stable systems is called homeostasis. Think of it as saying, home stays the same. The law of entropy says that everything should cool down, slow down, and stop. Life is an attempt at self-preservation, resisting the laws of entropy by drawing or generating energy to survive and keep going against the odds for as long as possible. Now for a pop quiz. You can pause the video on each of the following images to consider this question before giving your answer. If you found this video to be a helpful supplement in science education, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with any teachers or homeschoolers you know who you think might appreciate it. Try this yourself. Make a backyard field guide of the living things in your backyard. Scavenger hunt with your friends and siblings and see who can come up with the most living things around your house and backyard. Here is a link to making a field guide from the National Wildlife Federation.